At the dawn of the third decade of the 21st century, global capital markets witnessed an unprecedented miracle. The protagonist of this myth was not a mega conglomerate controlling the world's crude oil lifelines, nor a software empire presiding over the daily social interactions of billions. Instead, it was a hardware enterprise selling slices of silicon, NVIDIA. At the end of 2022, the debut of ChatGPT struck the tech industry like a bolt of lightning. From that day on, generative AI, multimodal large language models, LLMs, and autonomous AI agents reshaped the global tech landscape at a breakneck pace. Tech titans from Silicon Valley, from Microsoft and Google to Meta and Amazon, found themselves trapped in an inescapable arms race. In this geopolitical and corporate scramble, everyone's gaze locked onto the exact same ultimate strategic resource: compute. According to the latest data from global market research firms Gartner and IDC, NVIDIA has captured a staggering 85% to 90% absolute market share in the AI accelerator chip market required for modern data centers. This level of monopoly is not just unprecedented, it completely eclipses the golden eras of Intel or Microsoft. As hyperscalers exponentially increased their capital expenditures (CapEx) on AI infrastructure, NVIDIA's financial statements transformed into a literal money-printing machine. In just a few short years, NVIDIA's market capitalization skyrocketed along the steepest trajectory in financial history, systematically breaching the $1 trillion, $2 trillion, and $3 trillion thresholds, repeatedly claiming the crown as the world's most valuable company. The consensus among Wall Street analysts is definitive. In this fourth industrial revolution triggered by artificial intelligence, gold miners around the world may ultimately go bankrupt, but NVIDIA is the sole entity that completely monopolizes the shovels. This rate of wealth accumulation defies traditional macroeconomic conventions. It has altered the tech sector and profoundly shifted the dynamics of global capital markets. In weight reports from core indices like FTSE Russell and the S&P 500, the marginal contribution of a single NVIDIA stock to the volatility of the entire US stock market has reached astonishing levels. A popular saying on Wall Street goes, "When NVIDIA sneezes, global tech stocks catch pneumonia." A mere 10,000 top-tier NVIDIA chips can train a cognitive-defying large language model within months. In this cyber world built on silicon wafers, high-speed interconnects, and liquid cooling, traditional geographical borders and resource advantages are being fundamentally redefined. Oil is no longer the absolute metric of a nation's core competitiveness. It has been replaced by compute matrices flashing under a green logo. Never before in human history has a single company's hardware capacity so directly choked or accelerated the pace of global innovation. Jensen Huang, the Silicon Valley captain, always clad in his signature black leather jacket, is proving a cold, new economic law to the world. In the looming era of silicon-based intelligence, compute is the supreme power. If we attribute NVIDIA's success merely to being in the right place at the right time after 2022, we diminish one of the most astonishing displays of strategic foresight in business history. In economics, hardware assets rarely maintain long-term monopoly profits due to exorbitant fixed asset depreciation and fierce commoditization. NVIDIA's ability to break away from the semiconductor pack relies not on pure transistor stacking, but on an invisible yet lethal software web. CUDA, Compute Unified Device Architecture. This was a lonely, 20-year gamble that cost tens of billions of dollars and pushed the company to the brink of bankruptcy multiple times. Back in 2006, while gamers worldwide were immersing themselves in 3D worlds powered by NVIDIA's GeForce graphics cards, Jensen Huang spotted a fundamental mathematical intersection that Wall Street had yet to comprehend. To render pixels, a graphics chip needs to compute thousands of tiny matrix mathematical calculations simultaneously. This capacity for parallel computing was precisely the mathematical holy grail sought by scientific computing and the embryonic deep learning algorithms of the era. Thus, CUDA was born. Its essence was to build a bridge, allowing scientists and engineers worldwide to directly use standard programming languages like C/C++ to harness the raw parallel computing power inside the GPU without having to navigate obscure graphics shading code. However, under the ruthless logic of market economics, premature strategy often spells financial ruin. To implement CUDA, NVIDIA made a radical choice, forcefully embedding CUDA circuitry into every single consumer-grade gaming graphics card rolling off the assembly line. This meant that ordinary gamers, without realizing it, were subsidizing the early R&D costs of a scientific software ecosystem. For NVIDIA, it meant inflated die sizes, soaring manufacturing costs, and a nosedive in gross margins. According to historical SEC Form 10-K filings, during the painful transition period between 2006 and 2011, NVIDIA consistently poured 25% to 30% of its total annual revenue into research and development, R&D. For a hardware company that had not yet crossed into Titan status, this level of R&D intensity was the financial equivalent of tightrope walking across a canyon without a safety harness. Wall Street responded with short-sighted cynicism. Capital markets could not fathom why a gaming hardware company was burning through fortunes to court a tiny faction of university scientists and mathematicians who could not afford mass-market hardware. Around the 2008 financial crisis, hit by core business setbacks and the relentless cash burn of the CUDA project, NVIDIA's analyst ratings were systematically slashed and its stock price collapsed by nearly 80% at its nadir. Shareholders angrily demanded to know when this ethereal software platform would ever generate a return. It was an incredibly lonely time, Jensen Huang recalled in a later public address. Wall Street simply didn't believe in the future of parallel computing, but we knew that once the software snowball started rolling, the laws of gravity would reverse. Huang won his bet. By using every dollar of profit squeezed from the consumer gaming market, he constructed a religious ecosystem that global researchers had no choice but to rely upon. From the watershed moment of the ImageNet deep learning model in 2012 to today, virtually every major AI framework, including PyTorch and TensorFlow, is heavily optimized at its lowest level based on CUDA. According to the latest industry data, the number of registered CUDA developers globally has officially bypassed the 6 million mark, with over 40,000 organizations and enterprises deeply reliant on CUDA-accelerated applications. In economics, this creates a textbook definition of a network effect and high switching costs. If an AI startup attempts to purchase lower-priced, non-NVIDIA chips, they quickly run into a fatal sunk cost trap. Almost every existing AI algorithm code, open-source toolkit, and debugging software on the market is meticulously tailored for CUDA. The time cost and developer salaries required to rewrite low-level code and troubleshoot hardware compatibility far outweigh any savings gained from cheaper hardware. Hardware superiority can be matched or overtaken within 1 or 2 foundry process nodes. However, a software fortress built by millions of engineers over 2 decades, utilizing hundreds of low-level code libraries and kernel optimizations, forms a soft monopoly that physical laws alone cannot dismantle. This is the core architecture of the NVIDIA empire. Competitors believe they are racing against a chip design firm, but in reality, they are fighting an octopus that commands the entire full-stack AI software ecosystem. The hardware is merely the visible, spectacular tip of the iceberg. The CUDA ecosystem is the massive glacier hidden beneath the surface, designed to crush anyone in its path. To truly understand NVIDIA's margins, one must look past macroeconomic abstractions. In this act, we step directly into NVIDIA's secret weapon vault. From the gaming graphics cards that first put it on the map to the modern liquid-cooled racks that govern global compute, the evolution of NVIDIA's product lineup is a radical chronicle of accelerating computational density. NVIDIA's legacy began with the GeForce lineup. In 1999, the company launched the GeForce 256, inventing the term GPU, Graphics Processing Unit. At the time, it was dismissed as an upscale toy for gamers, responsible for rendering realistic lighting and complex triangle matrices in games like Half-Life or Counter-Strike. Yet, this architecture, forced into existence by gamers demanding bleeding-edge visual fidelity, shared a destiny with the deep learning AI models that arrived 2 decades later. While Intel's CPUs operated like an incredibly intelligent but single-core 100-meter sprinter, executing complex logical tasks one by one, NVIDIA's GPUs evolved into a massive stadium of thousands of elementary students, capable of performing simple matrix multiplications simultaneously in parallel. From the GeForce 256 to today's globally coveted RTX 4090 and 5090 series, the consumer market did more than provide NVIDIA with continuous cash flow. It served as a mass-market sandbox to test, refine, and iterate multiple generations of microarchitecture. As the artificial intelligence singularity approached, NVIDIA pivoted its weight to enterprise data centers. The products that truly secured its silicon throne were the A100 and H100, based on the Ampere and Hopper architectures, respectively. The H100 GPU, mass-produced in 2022, became the strategic crude oil that Silicon Valley elites and sovereign states scrambled to hoard. Packing 80 billion transistors, the H100 introduced the transformer engine directly at the silicon level. This hardware-level optimization automatically calibrates data precision during LLM training, allowing the H100 to train large language models up to 6 times faster than its predecessor, the A100. This structural advantage granted NVIDIA absolute pricing leverage. According to teardown analysis from Tech Insights and Yole Intelligence, the manufacturing margins of the H100 are staggering. The baseline physical BOM cost, covering TSMC's 4-nanometer wafers, high-bandwidth memory, HBM3, and advanced packaging fees, sits roughly between $3,000 and $3,500. Yet, at the height of supply shortages, the H100 fetched anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000 on official and secondary channels. This pushed the gross margins of NVIDIA's data center division to an astronomical 75 to 80%. In traditional hardware manufacturing, where margins are hard-fought, this is an anomaly, crossing squarely into the hyper-profitable realms of luxury goods or software licensing. NVIDIA refused to give its competitors breathing room. Just as AMD and hyperscale cloud providers designed custom ASIC chips to challenge the raw performance of a single H100, NVIDIA unveiled its Blackwell architecture, escalating the theater of war to a systemic level. The physical die size of the flagship B200 chip pushes the absolute geometric boundaries of modern photolithography equipment, the reticle limit. To extract more power, NVIDIA used high-bandwidth, ultra-low latency interconnects to fuse 2 independent dies into a single cohesive unit, yielding a gargantuan 2,080 billion transistors. Yet, the true genius of the Blackwell era lies not in a standalone card, but in the GB200 NVL72 liquid-cooled server rack. Inside this massive computing enclosure, which weighs several tons and commands a multi-million-dollar price tag, NVIDIA utilizes 5th-generation NVLink technology, miles of high-density copper cabling fuse 72 Blackwell GPUs and 36 Grace CPUs into a singular entity. Electronically, the data center cluster no longer interacts with 72 separate graphics cards, but interfaces with a single unified GPU capable of processing multi-trillion parameter models. By shifting its core product architecture from components to integrated systems, NVIDIA eliminated the memory wall and communication latencies native to distributed computing. Concurrently, this cemented its systemic monopoly. NVIDIA began bundling its GPUs with high-speed InfiniBand networking equipment, a technological legacy inherited from its acquisition of Mellanox. If a client attempts to buy standalone NVIDIA chips while relying on third-party networking hardware, the compute efficiency drops precipitously. This full-stack system architecture effectively shuts out competitors who only offer standalone chips without an integrated system ecosystem. Looking ahead, NVIDIA's product roadmap exhibits a deliberate, suffocating cadence. Even as Blackwell clusters roll out to Tier 1 data centers globally, the company has already finalized and begun executing its next architectural paradigm, Vera Rubin. The Rubin architecture is projected to leverage TSMC's cutting-edge 3-nanometer process node and will feature next-generation HBM4, 6th-generation high-bandwidth memory. Compared to Blackwell, Rubin will introduce another exponential leap in computational density, power efficiency, and interconnect throughput for ultra-scale, million-card supercomputing clusters. What truly unnerves the industry is that with Rubin, Jensen Huang officially committed NVIDIA to a 1-year rhythm product iteration cycle, down from the traditional 2-year cycle. In Silicon Valley's techno-economics, this is known as a compressed attrition strategy. Orchestrating a next-generation semiconductor architecture costs billions in R&D. Legacy chipmakers typically require an architecture to remain active for 2 to 3 years to amortize expenses and realize profitability. Armed with immense cash reserves, NVIDIA forces a hardware refresh cycle every 12 months. By the time AMD or Intel marshals their corporate resources to deliver a chip capable of matching NVIDIA's older H100 architecture, NVIDIA's Blackwell is already in mass production, and early silicon samples of Rubin are already arriving at the laboratories of Microsoft and OpenAI. This calculated temporal gap ensures that followers are left with the commodity margins of the market, structurally starved of the hyper-profits required to fund their own next-generation R&D. Having dismantled NVIDIA's vast arsenal, we must now turn our lens to the underlying mechanics of capital. How does this company translate its hardware dominance and software ecosystem into a super trust business model that defies modern macroeconomic gravity? In the traditional semiconductor market, corporate competition has historically conformed to the cyclical patterns of commodity economics. A manufacturer introduces a faster processor, reaps outsized profits for 1 to 2 years, and then watches as competitors catch up. Overproduction ensues, prices crater, and profit margins regress to the industry mean. Intel, AMD, and Qualcomm have all spent decades trapped in this silicon cycle. NVIDIA, however, has broken free from this gravitational pull through full-stack software integration and systemic hardware locking. The essence of NVIDIA's business model is disguising its hardware sales as a software platform and then converting that software ecosystem into a massive hardware premium. In economic terms, this structure possesses 3 terrifying characteristics. 1. Extreme operating leverage. In traditional manufacturing, costs rise linearly alongside production volume due to raw materials, foundry fees, and logistics. But NVIDIA's core asset is the millions of foundational libraries and optimization software packages embedded within the CUDA ecosystem. The cost of replicating software is zero. When the global AI wave erupted and millions of H100 and Blackwell chips were shipped worldwide, the massive fixed costs NVIDIA had poured into early software R&D were instantly diluted to infinity. Consequently, net profit growth began outstripping revenue growth at an exponential rate. 2. The ecosystem-locked compute tax. In the fourth industrial revolution, compute has taken on the properties of a public utility, much like electricity or water. Yet, unlike a public power grid, the tap of global AI compute is controlled by a single private corporation. Customers who buy into the GB200 architecture are not just purchasing silicon, they are fundamentally required to subscribe to the NVIDIA AI Enterprise software suite. This implies that as long as large language models are running, and as long as developers are invoking APIs, tech titans must pay a continuous ecosystem tax to NVIDIA on top of their exorbitant electricity bills. Hardware sales are transactional and finite. This software ecosystem tax is a perpetual, cycle-transcending cash flow machine. Financial analysis from Wall Street investment firms indicates NVIDIA has successfully pivoted from a cyclical hardware manufacturer into a high-stickiness, hyper-profitable platform, SaaS, software as a service, giant. This is precisely why its price-to-earnings, PE ratio, commands a multiple that leaves traditional hardware peers entirely in the dust. 3. The edgewalker of antitrust. In free market economics, a monopoly of this scale typically invites immediate interventionist crackdowns from antitrust authorities. However, NVIDIA's brilliance lies in the fact that its monopoly is not enforced through predatory exclusive commercial agreements, but through pure technological synergy. NVIDIA does not forbid its customers from buying AMD chips. It simply ensures that if you attempt to run non-CUDA code on a GB200 server cluster, your computational efficiency drops by 70%. This organic monopoly, forged through technical barriers, leaves regulators scrambling for actionable antitrust evidence. It operates simultaneously as a massive commercial trust and as the sole indispensable engine of modern technological innovation. Through this unique economic loop, NVIDIA has built a moat on Wall Street lined with billions of dollars. Yet this flawless printing press is not without its Achilles heel. As we shift our gaze from the trading floors of New York to the geopolitical fault lines of the Pacific, the foundation of this Silicon empire reveals itself to be built upon the most volatile choke point on Earth. While NVIDIA has engineered a seemingly airtight empire across Wall Street and software ecosystems, its physical fate remains tethered to the most geopolitically sensitive supply chain in human history. NVIDIA is a classic fabless semiconductor firm. This means that despite holding the immaculate blueprints for the H100, Blackwell, and the upcoming Rubin architectures, it does not own a single operational wafer fab. Transforming those digital schematics into physical silicon capable of churning out intelligence depends entirely on an extremely centralized global division of labor, and this constitutes its most vulnerable liability. In this hyper-concentrated supply chain architecture, the critical bottleneck is not the early-stage photolithography, but rather the back-end advanced packaging. For the Blackwell, B200, and upcoming Rubin chips to achieve their exponential leaps in performance, logic GPUs must be fused with massive arrays of high-bandwidth memory, HBM, with micrometer precision. Globally, the commercial 2.5D/3D packaging process capable of achieving this density is almost entirely dominated by TSMC's proprietary CoWoS chip-on-wafer-on-substrate technology. According to supply chain allocation matrices compiled by specialized agencies like Silicon Analysts and TrendForce, under relentless pressure from the tech sector, TSMC has aggressively scaled its CoWoS monthly capacity, targeting an output of 120,000 to 130,000 wafers per month by the close of 2026. Yet, in this global computational feast, NVIDIA alone devours roughly 60% of this total capacity, consuming an estimated 595,000 wafers, effectively pre-booking the vast majority of TSMC's expansion lines well into 2027. This extreme concentration represents a textbook example of single-source supply risk. If TSMC's foundries were to stall for even a few weeks due to geopolitical friction, natural disasters, or power grid failures, the hardware supply feeding global artificial intelligence would instantly suffocate. Compounding this physical capacity ceiling, geopolitical maneuverings are directly reshaping NVIDIA's revenue geography. As the U.S. Department of Commerce's Bureau of Industry and Security, BIS, continuously tightens export control policies on cutting-edge AI silicon, NVIDIA's exposure to high-growth markets in Asia has become a volatile liability. To safeguard its immense market share, NVIDIA's corporate strategy has devolved into a high-stakes tightrope walk between regulatory red lines and commercial survival. When the H100 faced export prohibitions, the company worked overnight to recalibrate its product lines, designing compliance-specific chips tailored for restricted markets. Macroeconomic analysis indicates this politics-driven engineering imposes heavy hidden structural costs on NVIDIA. It siphons away valuable R&D assets to design downgraded, market-specific variations, such as the H20 series, while simultaneously handing domestic competitors an extended ecological window to scale localized alternatives. In an era where compute is increasingly weaponized as a symbol of sovereign statehood, NVIDIA's products have ceased to be mere commercial commodities. They have evolved into critical geopolitical leverage. The Trans-Pacific semiconductor supply chain requires only a microscopic fracture to trigger massive macroeconomic shockwaves across the entire $3 trillion empire. Even if NVIDIA successfully navigates software moats, supply chain vulnerabilities, and geopolitical landmines, the most unyielding wall the empire faces on a macro scale comes from the immutable laws of classical physics, thermodynamics, and energy economics. The end of compute is electricity. This technological aphorism is now translating into stark financial reality, as NVIDIA's product portfolio mutated from the A100 to the H100 and surged forward into the Blackwell, B200/GB200, and Rubin architectures. Computational performance scaled exponentially, but so did the hardware's thermal design power, TDP. To keep these ravenous silicon processors running at peak execution, the fundamental design architecture of modern data centers is undergoing a structural mutation. When a hyperscaler attempts to deploy a cluster of 100,000 cutting-edge Blackwell chips, the immediate crisis they face is not the upfront capital cost of the hardware, but the local energy grid flashing red under the load. According to macroeconomic models developed by the International Energy Agency, IEA, and Goldman Sachs, a state-of-the-art data center facility housing tens of thousands of top-tier NVIDIA cards, complete with high-speed interconnect fabric and heavy liquid cooling infrastructure, demands an uninterrupted baseload power draw measuring hundreds of megawatts, MW. Mathematically, the energy required to sustain a single ultra-scale AI data center campus is now equivalent to the entire electrical generation capacity of a mid-sized European city. This voracious appetite for energy has triggered a cascade of macroeconomic reactions. First, it has fundamentally transformed NVIDIA's product packaging strategy. Because conventional forced air cooling systems are physically incapable of dissipating over a kilowatt of heat from a single chip package, NVIDIA has been forced to mandate liquid cooling architecture as a non-negotiable default for its Blackwell and Rubin systems, such as the GB200 NVL72. This setup inflates the unit price of the system while driving data center civil engineering expenses into a financial black hole. Second, it has completely realigned the capital expenditure priorities of tech giants. In today's capital markets, as Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and Meta aggressively acquire NVIDIA hardware, they are simultaneously executing a strategic move unprecedented in corporate history, investing billions directly into clean energy infrastructure and signing long-term power purchase agreements with nuclear power stations. Energy economists at Sequoia Capital note, the physical race for compute has transformed into a land grab for stable baseload power. Whichever entity secures clean, uninterrupted nuclear or hydroelectric generation earns the right to boot up NVIDIA's latest clusters. Without grid allocation, a multi-million-dollar GB200 rack is nothing more than an expensive block of silent silicon. Never before in industrial history has the expansion of a technology so rapidly collided with the physical infrastructure limits of sovereign power grids. NVIDIA has utilized unparalleled engineering to push humanity to the precipice of artificial general intelligence, AGI, but the physical universe is casting a cold, long shadow over the energy supply. When foundries and clusters compete with civil infrastructure for grid capacity, Wall Street is forced to confront an uncomfortable economic riddle. Can the ultimate return on investment, ROI, of this multi-billion-dollar build-out actually justify the staggering scale of this energy feast? Amid the euphoria of the capital markets, NVIDIA's stock price appears to have escaped gravitational pull. Yet, the foundational laws of macroeconomics remain absolute. Any upstream boom in infrastructure must ultimately be vindicated by real, cash-generating monetization in the downstream consumer market. Here, Wall Street's analytical consensus begins to fracture, and the ghost of a tech giant that collapsed during the 2000 dot-com bust has begun to hover over NVIDIA's valuation. That ghost is Cisco Systems. Rewinding to the late 1990s dot-com boom, telecommunications providers and internet startups were convinced that the global economy would digitize overnight. To secure prime digital real estate, they aggressively stockpiled Cisco routers and switches. Cisco's financial statements mirrored the explosive growth seen in NVIDIA today, culminating in Cisco capturing the spot as the world's most valuable corporation in March 2000. The prevailing wisdom claimed Cisco was the ultimate shovel seller. No matter which dot-com company survived, Cisco would win. However, this dynamic triggered a destructive macroeconomic phenomenon known as the bullwhip effect. Once telecom providers spent hundreds of billions laying down fiber optics and installing Cisco routing hardware, they faced a stark realization. End users were merely using the web to send basic text emails and view static HTML pages. The actual revenues generated by early internet applications could not service the massive debts and depreciation costs incurred to buy the hardware. Virtually overnight, debt-laden carriers halted all subsequent capital procurement. Cisco's order book evaporated in a matter of quarters, and its stock price collapsed by nearly 90% in the ensuing crash, never again returning to its historic peak. Is NVIDIA reenacting the Cisco tragedy? According to macroeconomic research published by Goldman Sachs in its report, AI, Massive Investment, Minimal Return, and the $6,000 billion AI ROI gap model tracked by Sequoia Capital, the technology sector is experiencing a severe mismatch between capital allocation and realized yield. The data shows that the technology collective, led by Microsoft, Meta, Google, and Amazon, is deploying hundreds of billions annually into NVIDIA silicon and AI data center construction, factoring in hardware depreciation and the steep operational margins of data center logistics. The industry must generate at least $600 billion in net new AI-driven revenue annually just to achieve a basic break-even point on current hardware investments. Yet, real-world macroeconomic indicators paint a more conservative picture. Global aggregate revenue derived from AI software subscriptions, such as Copilot platforms, cloud compute API orchestration, and enterprise AI consulting implementations, is estimated to hover around $100 billion to $150 billion. A massive multi-billion-dollar capital chasm sits right in the middle of the balance sheet. The tech elite continue to aggressively purchase Blackwell and Rubin architecture clusters, largely because they are trapped in a profound corporate prisoner's dilemma. No individual firm dares to slow down its capital outlays. To decelerate is to risk total exclusion from the ultimate sovereign asset of the century, artificial general intelligence. This is defensive capital expenditure. But capital markets possess finite patience. Silicon chips are not gold bars. They suffer from relentless physical degradation and punishing technological obsolescence cycles. The investments poured into Hopper have barely been amortized before the depreciation hammer of Blackwell falls, all while the Rubin architecture prepares to take the stage a year later. If the next 12 to 24 months fail to yield a breakout, consumer-facing AI business model capable of driving hundreds of billions in free cash flow, corporate boards will find their patience exhausted. The moment Wall Street begins to punish hyperscalers for unbacked AI capital expenditures, the bullwhip effect cascading backward to the upstream chip tier will be swift and unforgiving. NVIDIA's vaunted 80% gross margins and aggressive pricing cadences could instantly invert, turning from a money-printing machine into an existential inventory crisis across the entire semiconductor supply chain. Within this immense vortex of shifting geopolitics, commercial ambitions, and raw physical constraints, NVIDIA has erected a compute empire unparalleled in industrial history. Yet, the iron laws of market economics dictate that an absolute, prolonged monopoly, operating at an 80% gross margin, behaves like a beacon, drawing every capable predator in the ecosystem. As NVIDIA continues to collect its steep compute tax from the global tech sector, a quiet, coordinated silicon rebellion has begun to take shape on the horizon. The technology elite are weary of the green monopoly. For NVIDIA's core customer base, the hyperscale cloud operators, surrendering a massive percentage of their annual capital expenditures to Jensen Huang is an unsustainable drain on corporate profitability and an unacceptable forfeiture of architectural autonomy. Consequently, the engineering of a de-NVIDIAized hardware stack has become the most critical, unvocalized priority in Silicon Valley. The opening salvo of this rebellion is being delivered by custom ASIC, application-specific integrated circuit, architectures engineered in-house by the hyperscalers themselves. Google has deployed its 6th-generation TPU architecture, Trillium TPU v6e, alongside its latest 7th-generation Ironwood-class silicon. These chips are custom-tailored to run Google's internal Gemini models and cloud-native compute arrays, achieving significant price-to-performance and energy efficiency advantages over NVIDIA's standalone cards for targeted tasks. Amazon's Trainium 2 silicon and Microsoft's Azure Maya 100 processors are being deployed across internal server infrastructures at an accelerating pace, serving as defensive, localized alternatives designed to systematically replace general-purpose GPUs. While these custom ASICs lack the sweeping versatility required to train cutting-edge foundation models from scratch, they excel at running specialized AI inference workloads and specific enterprise automations, systematically peeling away pieces of NVIDIA's addressable market. Concurrently, the software moat is showing signs of vulnerability. The deployment of the open-source Triton programming framework by OpenAI, AMD's aggressive software iterations with its open ROCm ecosystem, and a collective industry industry push toward framework neutrality are gradually eroding the low-level monopoly once guaranteed by CUDA. Semiconductor analysts at Mercury Research note in their latest industry guidance, the AI compute landscape is entering an irreversible phase of bifurcation. The apex tier of raw, general-purpose AGI experimentation will remain the undisputed domain of NVIDIA's Blackwell and Rubin architectures. However, the broader, high-volume downstream application layer is being aggressively carved up by customized in-house ASICs and cost-effective alternatives from AMD. Pulling back the lens on the era of NVIDIA's ascendancy, it becomes clear that the company has evolved beyond the boundaries of a standard corporate enterprise. It has assumed the dimensions of a sovereign technological entity at a critical inflection point in human development. Every slice of silicon rolling out of its clean rooms acts as a macroeconomic weight, altering the balance of geopolitical power, capital configurations, and the acceleration of human capability. In the digital architecture of the future, if machine intelligence indeed solidifies into a fundamental commodity like oil or electricity, then NVIDIA has achieved something extraordinary. It has become the first entity in history to monopolize the factories that manufacture intelligence itself. For over 2 decades, its architecture of copper cabling, liquid-cooled enclosures, and millions of software developers has held market gravity at bay. Yet the laws of economic gravity are never permanently suspended. From the railway barons of the 19th century to Standard Oil in the 20th and the early internet trusts of the 21st, history records a consistent verdict. No empire maintains an absolute monopoly over the gateways to the future indefinitely. NVIDIA has successfully escorted humanity to the threshold of an intelligence explosion. Now, it must prepare to meet its own ultimate economic judgment within the volatile, high-stakes era it fought so hard to create.